Hi everyone, I want to thank you for coming out to check out my YouTube video. This is going to be my first one. We're going to be making a chocolate cake today, so I hope everything goes well. Okay, so first, I already pre-made the cake, and I cut it into threes. So, what I'm going to do is separate them and fill them. I also made some strawberry filling too. The reason for the white around the cake is just a little barrier, just so when you stack the cake, the filling doesn't go through the sides. And put the next layer on. You want to make sure it's nice and centered, and then nice and flat. And go ahead and do the same thing. And the last layer. So right now we have probably about a 5-inch cake. Okay, and peel parchment paper. We're good to go. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to clean up this table a little bit, and then we're going to ice the cake. Okay, now what we're going to do is I'm going to ice the cake. I already have my bag filled up with icing, so I'm just going to go around the cake. It's a little more icy. And then a little bit on top. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is just smooth everything out. thing. So what you're going to do is just smooth out the buttercream. You don't want it to be really thick. You want it to be kind of thin, because when you put the fondant on, it'll be easier to maneuver and not have to put fingerprints inside the cake. So even if it crumbs, don't worry about that. All this will be covered up. Just want this to be as smooth as you can. And just have it nice and settled. There we go. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put this cake in the fridge. I'm going to clean up the table and I'm going to knead up my fondant and have it ready to put over and cover. So I'll be back in a little bit. Okay everyone, now I'm back. So what I did was clean off the table. I put the ice cake in the fridge. I kneaded my fondant so it was nice and pliable to work with. I kneaded it with Crisco. And then I also sifted powdered sugar all over the table so it won't stick to the table while I roll it out. So what I'm going to do is roll out the fondant so it's large enough to cover the entire 10-inch cake. And the reason why I use powdered sugar also is because a lot of people complain that fondant doesn't taste good or it just doesn't have a great taste. The powdered sugar gives it a good sugary taste, even though it's sweet enough as it is. But what you want to do once in a while is pick up the fondant and move the sugar around and flip it over, just so you make sure that it doesn't stick at all. One of the hardest parts right now. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep doing this, and I'm going to come back. I don't want to have to make you go through the whole time of me rolling this out. But I'll be back in a little bit, and when I come back I'll have this table cleaned off with all the powdered sugar. I'll have the cake on the table and ready to place the fondant on it. And then after that we'll get to the fun part, and it's going to be decorating it and making it look as good as it tastes. I'll be right back. Okay, now the next step for making this cake is covering the cake with the fondant. So what I did was I rolled it all the way out so it can cover the entire cake. And after I took the cake out of the fridge, the icing gets a little stiff, so what you do is just wet it down a little bit with a little bit of water. Now that the fondant's rolled out, what you're going to do is just kind of roll it right on top of the cake, like this. That's how it covers every bit of it. So now, what you're going to do is just cover up the cake. This takes a little bit of practice. It took me a while to learn how to do, but after you learn it, it's a piece of cake and piece of cake, and it also makes your cake look that much better. My best advice when you do this, if you cover the cake, is to always pull away from you. So if you're on this side, you're going to pull out. You always want to work on the side that's kind of in front of you. So once you get this on, you can get a knife or a pizza cutter, anything that's pretty much sharp, that's really sharp, that's not going to make some crazy creases on here, and you want to make sure it cuts all the way through. You're going to cut all the excess off. This right here is a special tool that I bought at a cake shop, and it works pretty well. So you just cut all these pieces off, all the way around. Here we go, here's all the extra pieces. Just put it into a little ball, package it up, make sure it's nice and airtight. And then what you're going to do is get a little bit more powdered sugar, sprinkle it on top. And I have a fondant smoother right here, kind of like sandpaper. What you're doing is just smooth it all the way around, just so it gets nice and smooth. And then you can just kind of move your hands around and take off that extra powdered sugar. And again, the powdered sugar is going to make it taste a lot better instead of using cornstarch or any of the other stuff. Perfect. And if you still have any other extra pieces from smoothing it out, just go ahead and cut it off. And make sure too, if you are working with the fondant, to take off your rings. I did take mine off, and it always messes me up every time I forget. I always end up doing the fondant, and then I try to smooth it out with my hands or go like this, and my ring will cut it, and that's not good. I either start all over, or it takes a while just to fix up those little creases that you make. Okay, so once you feel like it's pretty smooth, what you're going to do is, this is the baseboard. I put some buttercream on the bottom here, just so it sticks onto it. And you're just going to pick up the cake. Here's the cake. And try to center it as best as you can. And that actually looks pretty centered. So go ahead and smooth it out again to make sure it looks nice and good here. So the buttercream actually on the bottom of the baseboard acts like glue, so that's the good thing too. If you're only going to use one layer, it's not really necessary to have to put a stick into it or any of that. It should be able to hold pretty much on the weight that it is. So now I'm going to re-clean up the table. I know there's a lot of cleaning in this process, but we want to make sure everything looks pretty good and you don't want to mess up or have something come into something that doesn't belong. So I'm going to clean up the table, and then I'm going to bring the other stuff. What I did make was pre-made chocolate roses and chocolate leaves. So that's going to come into the center, and then we're just going to decorate the rest of the cake. So I'll be back in just a second.